Welcome, everyone, to the Meaningful Hearts Podcast, where we discuss the everyday questions that make us or break us if we let them. I am your host, Drew. Take my hand and let's walk this journey together. Hello, everyone. I'm going to take you on a little adventure. Blah, blah, blah. We're just checking the levels right now. All right. So, what I want to talk about today is your band breaking up? The people around you, maybe a group of your friends that you're doing something with. Are the Beatles breaking up? Are you going to go solo? Or are you going to join the group and follow suit? I'd say that a lot of times we want to get together with our friends or family members, some people we have a good rapport with, and we decide that we want to go the route of, I guess, the business venture together. Because, I mean, let's face it. I mean, work sucks for a lot of you. For myself included, I'm not going to lie, I've hated my jobs or not really enjoyed them. And I wonder what it was like to be part of a group of people that I love to spend most of my time with and actually make a living. I mean, that's a dream sequence, right? That's a dream come true. So we do that. We actually really do that. We brainstorm. We might be out having a couple of drinks and with the guys or the girls, whoever. And then we decide, hey, we could really do that. That could work. We could do this. And then you guys start fantasizing about all the cool stuff you'd be doing together and yada, yada, yada. And then you execute the plan of actually doing it, right? So day one starts. Everybody's fired up. This idea is amazing. Everybody's on the same page. Ideas are flying. Fast forward, a couple of weeks in, 3 weeks in, a month in, 2 months in, however it is. And then you notice that not everybody's on the same page anymore. Or they're not as engaged as they once were. Or the ideas are gone. Or you're the only one doing work. Or maybe you're just not feeling it. And then you start to ponder, who's really involved in this? Who's really has their heart in this and who's not? And then you point fingers because that happens too. Oh, I can't make it tonight. I can't do this tonight. And it's like, yeah, what are you talking about? You can't do this tonight. We have an agreement. We're trying to build something big here, and it doesn't happen. They're like, no, my family. I have some. Depending on what your lifestyle is like. I have something else I have to take care of. And then you start to question that person starts to question you, whoever makes the excuse. And then you notice that you're fighting with your friends. And in essence, why I say the band is breaking up is because you pretty much are a band. Everybody plays their role in the band. And together you guys make this beautiful music, this business or whatever it is. And the real question is why does that happen? And maybe you walk away disappointed, right? Maybe there's been other things in your life that you try to do as a team and with your friends and it just never worked out. But you really got to look at yourself, right? You really got to look at yourself and say, well, maybe I put too much pressure or too much on this situation and I figured this would be my way out. And, that's a good way to set yourself up for disappointment. I know because I've done it. It took me a very long time to understand that. Maybe the idea that you had wasn't that strong. Or maybe you guys were drinking. You guys were feeling great. And it sounded good at the time because you guys were feeling great. Who knows? But I will say that if you go into anything, any type of business scenario, any type of agreement with somebody else, just be willing to move forward with that idea, even if that person doesn't want to do it anymore. because collectively, right, you guys are going together with this on the same understanding that you want to do this one thing, whatever it is, but the passion should be there with or without that person. And if it's not, then you should never move forward with it. I will say that again, that you should never move forward with something in a partnership if you're not willing to go at it alone already. Do not get in bed with somebody. Do not do that. Because you're putting your woes and your worries on somebody else's back. And maybe they're 25% in. That their 25% is, you know, the way it looks at it, you know, maybe that's their best. That's their best, you know, commitment that they can give is their 25%, which, you know, when you say when I say I'm giving 100%, it means I'm giving it all. But somebody else might say, "Oh, I'm giving it all technically," but it's really like 25% of what you would actually call a commitment. That's the other thing, right? You can only control what goes on in your mind. You can't control what goes on in other people's minds. And that sucks. It actually is. It's scary because it brings on a lot of arguments too, right? If you see somebody that does something differently than you normally would do it, and you're like questioning them, "Oh, why are they doing it that way?" Or this is their thought process. No, that's not going to work. Like, you're already getting at them for maybe not putting in the same effort. It's not because they're not. They might just be doing it in a different way, or that's their capacity of what they can give. But ultimately, it is up to you. It's your responsibility to make this happen with or without them. Because if you look at successful businesses, you know, ideas, you know, founders of companies, and if you ever follow some of these stories, relationships get severed. People split up. You know, I mean, there are some really big companies that, you know, they started off together and they split up. You look at the food industry, you know, you have, you know, a guy comes out with a product and, you know, look at pizza is the best example. I say pizza is one of the best examples. You know, they talk about Patsy's, you know, pizzeria, you know, and the whole family behind the Patsy's pies. And then you have Lombardi's, and you have all these other pizzeria joints, and these are the originals of New York, the first pizzerias ever hit the United States, period. And it started off with one guy in a pizza shop with a pizza guy, and he decides that he wants to take his skill, the guy who's cooking the pizza, and branch out on his own and make his own pizzeria. You know, the person that originally had the pizzeria running, what is he going to say? I'm going to hang my hat up now? No. He's going to go continue to make pizza. And the guy who left is going to make his own pizzeria. And vice, you know, and so on and so forth. You know, in the candy industry, I believe, you know, the Mars Company or Hershey's and, you know, all that. There was partnerships that split up, or somebody who worked for the company left, or the son of the, you know, the father who started the company came in and contributed, and he left and he started his own company. And then you have these big titans, these big companies that they're great on their own, right? But they decided they're going to go at this regardless, right? They're going to go at this venture regardless of what happens, right? And I think you can take a lot from that, because it shows you that people alone can do great things as well as people partner up with other people. And sometimes you just have more passion than somebody else. And you just can't be mad at somebody for not giving it what you thought it should be given, and then you decide to quit. You know, I guess everybody's allowed to quit, right? You know, everybody's allowed to change their mind. It's a relationship. Sometimes relationships don't work out. You know, you just want to give your all, but you have to be willing to go at it 100% with or without that person. You know, you're going to move on with your life and you're still going to chug forward. It's the same thing, you know, with a business. It's very hard. It's very hard to gauge what somebody else is thinking. It really is. You know, I think that word to the wise, I would say, is get involved in a business later on with somebody else once you're already in the industry and doing whatever it is that you're doing, and you're already successful at it alone. And then you could only build on you could build this bigger enterprise with somebody else that might have a skill set you don't have, but they're already dedicated. They already have money involved. They already have a means to execute. They have a resume that shows, hey, I am successful, or I am driven to do this. You know, I've done this alone for quite a while. then you partner up with somebody that's the same pedigree as you. But don't do that beforehand. I mean, you're a bunch of amateurs in the garage talking about something. It's great to do that if you want to. But your failure rate is a lot higher. I mean, your failure rate is high even if you go at something alone. But adding somebody else into the mix and their own baggage also sets you off at a lower, even lower success rate. Because now you're counter relying on somebody else also and whoever else is involved. There's a lot of moving parts. So, you're not going to have a Wozniak Jobs scenario. Those things are rare. So, be wise to that. Be wise to that whole thing, I think. I've had some issues recently where I had a problem like this. I came with a new approach though. I used to get upset when I would get involved in something with somebody else and they just didn't have the same energy, and I just get so disappointed, so mad, and I'd be pointing fingers. But in reality, it was my own damn fault, like I said, because I wasn't willing to go at it alone. I was not willing to do this alone. I wanted to do this with somebody else, and kind of it's almost lazily saying that I was willing to let them carry me to an extent. Because when things weren't going on between us and we weren't going anywhere, I would do some of the work, but I was always reliant to say, oh, this is where I'm going to draw the line, and this is that person's responsibility to do that, do their half of the work. And it kind of doesn't go anywhere then. You're going to get mad at that person. You have these expectations of them that really just don't pan out. And then you're just pissed. So, a good friend of mine told me, and he went through the same process, that you really just gotta, you can't be using people. We're using people in a sense. You can't rely on you can't put your success on somebody else and be mad at them. You can't. And sometimes it takes a big loss, or it takes a big partnership to deteriorate and fall, or loss of money. I thank God I didn't really lose money, but my friend did. He lost a great deal of money to walk away from a situation that was toxic. And then he realized at that point that he needs to do this alone. He has a process involved. There's things that he does and the way that he goes about it, and he wants to make sure that he executes his plans accordingly with great pride and great Graham, I had a loss for words. Great with a lot of obviously a lot of tact as well, but just kind of just knowing what to do and just do it. And I think he felt that he was being held back in a sense too, because he also had to deal with the relationship with the other person. He had to, tread lightly on what he said to that person, because that person's in business with him, like a marriage. You don't just come out swinging in a marriage when you guys have a disagreement. You try to work it through. Obviously over time that, you realize you can't, and then you have a divorce. That's the same thing with a partnership. You just realize it's never going to work. But he was really hanging his hat on the idea that this other person had some leverage, and then he would just join up with this guy, and he would do his part, and that guy would do his part, and the bigger of the two would carry the business to the next level, and things would happen. And it didn't. It didn't happen. So he found himself, lost, back to square one, like kind of depressed and sad, and trying to figure out what it is that he wants to do. Because it's almost like he lost his sense, but then he realized that he had to be more confident in himself. He had to be a lot more confident in himself, believe in his abilities, and know that he can do it on his own, and do it better than it's ever been done. And I had that. He kind of brought that conversation to me when I mentioned something about a situation I was in, and you know what? It made sense. It made sense. So going back to the situation that I actually had recently, I entered that scenario knowing that whatever happens, I'm still going to push forward with what I'm doing anyways. I am. So I wasn't disappointed. And actually the disagreement, or what happened, was actually not between me and the two other people I was doing with. I was actually mediating a situation instead. And this whole thing dissolved because of something kind of silly, but it didn't involve me. But I also knew that I was doing this with or without them. And it was like a side project I already had going anyways. So I wasn't disappointed, because I knew I knew there was a great chance this was going to fail. If it succeeded, honestly, I would have been very surprised. But I take things away from it. It's not like I was bitter, even in the sense of wasted time. Regardless, I'd have expectations, but I learned some things from that. It actually got me to jumpstart some of the activities in my life and be a little more proactive. So it's very exciting. It was exciting to use that as a springboard to what I'm doing now. But I'll be honest with you, like for the other two people, they had a realization that I already had before coming into this, it's hysterical. So I know going forward that one of the two people that were involved are actually doing the same thing in a sense where it's like, yo, I'm gonna do this with or without anyone. And maybe it was their aha moment to actually take it upon themselves to say, you know what, this ship is not gonna run without me. I'm the fuel that keeps the motor running. So there's a lot to be learned from that, and honestly, it stemmed from somebody else telling it to me and me telling it to somebody else, and then cause and action. Actually, the action actually happening, and actually for that person to actually realize, you know what, you what I said to them was true, and what was said to me is true because I saw it. I got to see it proof positive once again. But I wasn't relying on anyone, so if for me, like I said, I sat back, I was humble about it, and I was okay with it. And I even told the other person, the other person that was involved in the project that, this is new to them. They've never really done any ventures together. I said, well, it's unfortunate this didn't work out, but you should still pursue this thing without us, because I'm going to pursue this without you guys as well. You have a lot to offer. Doesn't mean you don't have, just because it didn't work out with us, you still have a lot to offer, and I think you should still go ahead with it. So we'll see where that goes, because it will tell you whether that person really wanted to do it from the start. If they're at it alone, if you really want to do something, regardless of who's involved, you're going to do it. It's like an itch you have to scratch. I'm not at liberty to say what it was, for the protection of the people involved in a podcast and to the general public. I like to keep things under wraps. However, if I do get clearance at a certain point to speak on that, I will, as well as maybe have them on the show to talk about it, and we could laugh about it because we're still friends. There's no real animosity there. That's another thing. You have to enter into a partnership if you're doing it with friends or family, that you have to have that rapport or relationship with them where you're able to go down some dark places and have difficult conversations and be able to come out the other side still respecting and loving each other. I think that is ultimately one of the biggest things. You don't want to get into a financial scenario or a situation where you move forward and things get ugly, or you avoid having conversations because things will get ugly, or that person is very close to you. I've been in scenarios like this before, not in necessarily, a business dealing I did. I had a partnership with a business. We're still friends today. It took some pretty dark turns. It tested our relationship. We had some really difficult conversations. I'm not going to lie. Conversations I thought I would never have. But like I said, our relationship is still very strong, and we're actually able to have more in-depth conversations, real conversations. So it's a relationship builder or it's a relationship breaker. But if the relationship gets broken, it was never really to begin with. You should be able to have tough conversations with people that you care about, and that will further foster your relationship to be bigger and better. If you cannot have these conversations, you guys are not as close as you think you are. That's another thing I would say. You have to keep all these variables in mind. I tend to be that way in general in life. I'm a very direct person. But I think that a lot of people sway away from it because they don't want to have these conversations. I mean, I'm sure you've had a situation with a coworker where maybe they're things that they're doing are kind of like, getting in your way or hurting you. And you're afraid to have that conversation with them because you don't know what's going to happen. You know how they're going to react to it. And you kind of avoid it. And this is a coworker. This is not a friend. This is not a family member. This is a coworker. And so you play this cloak and dagger game where you guys smile at each other's faces, but like secretly you're like, having this chess match in your heads with each other. You really want to like punch each other. You really want to just like have it out, but you don't. But you slowly drift apart and you slowly probably stop talking to that coworker as much because there's tension there. It's fucking ridiculous. There's a way to have conversations. Don't get me wrong. Don't approach a conversation with anger. There's ways to have these conversations. You want the message not to get lost. That's another thing. When you do have these conversations, you want them to be, you want the words that you use, the way that you're expressing it, not to sound like it's an attack, but necessarily you're trying to get your frustrations out, but kind of putting it on the table as a complaint that you want to get addressed. All these things have to be considered when getting involved with each other. The bands break up all the time. Bands have been together for a long time, and then you have the story about how they were just tired of that one band member doing that thing, drinking or doing drugs or playing loud music or partying too much or not showing up to practices or sabotaging recording sessions, like all these crazy things. And these are successful, super successful. Money is tied up. They're signed under a record label together, and then the band just breaks up, and you're just like, what happened? What happened to this band? And you're talking about big bands, like really, really solid bands, 20 years together. And then they had enough. But they've been slowly fighting these battles for a long time. But I think that, like I said, you can't prevent a breakup if it's inevitable. But you also want to put yourself in the best scenario where, however that long that relationship lasts in business, you want it to go somewhere. So have honest conversations with the people you're getting involved with. It's real. This is something real. You're supposed to take it really serious. It's not like agreeing to play a pickup game of basketball. It's not. There's a lot that gets involved, and the more financially you become involved with somebody, the more successful a business becomes, things get really crazy. People start to think things. Conspiracies in their minds start to happen, or other coworkers or other employees that you have. There's a lot more moving parts. Things can happen. Money can shatter relationships as well. So you really have to look at it and say, do I want to put my life in this manner with you get involved with somebody like that? Do I want to do that? You really have to ask yourself that question, because the other person may not come out on the other side, agreeing with you, or they may not ever talk to you again. That's another thing. Some people enter these relationships and don't realize some other people can't keep it business related. They take it personal. I've had a close friend of mine as a boss. And let me tell you something. That wasn't pretty. He worked me harder than everybody else. He had higher expectations of me than anyone else. We obviously tried to keep it cool at work, but we had our conversations outside of work. Now being close friends and working together, there was a lot of disagreements. There was a lot of things that happened, a lot of things that were said. But it's like I could step away from that and still love and care about that person, and we could still have a drink after. But it does take a lot. It does take a lot of the human element. You have to be willing. You have to be willing to understand there's a difference between personal and business relationships. You have to understand that. You really, really do. And a lot of people do not think of this. It is so important. If you're dating someone, I'm sure you want compatibility, right? You want somebody that you kind of jive with, and you can kind of speak and understand and have a flow. And then if you get married, or if you take the relationship further, you understand that you could live with this person. You could share part of your life together with this person, and think that they have the ability to do certain tasks, because even in a marriage, there's things that you do that she doesn't do, or he doesn't do, or whatever. You guys kind of naturally select things that you're good at. And one person runs the financial aspect more than the other. And The other person does a little more of the heavy duty construction work. Who knows? But you naturally take these roles. But you know that you guys are compatible with each other, and you further the relationship. It's the same thing with a business. You know, you start from having a couple of drinks or having a lunch together talking about it, and then it slowly becomes its own entity. It's a real thing. It's a machine. It's living and breathing, and you are a part of this. And depending on how big it gets, there are people relying on you, relying on your business because you're feeding them now. You're feeding each other. And if the relationship was doomed from the start, you know, it's not a good scenario to get involved in. And things get toxic. It can get pretty ugly. So you just have to just take this thought process the same way you would with dating somebody, you know, provided that you have a good a good compass for, you know, staying away from toxic relationships. Some people just love toxicity. Stay away from that. But I think that's a really big thing to look at. Look at the pedigree of the person you're dealing with. Look at yourself. But I would say always be willing to go at it alone first. That's the takeaway from this. Be willing to go at it alone first, with or without a partner. And then you'll see whether you really want to do it. And try to see how far you can go and take this business before you start scouting other hands aboard to help you. You know, learn the machine. Learn the machine that you're working on. Learn it. Definitely be, be the captain of the ship, and you can find another co-captain or whatever. And then you guys will double your business, triple your business, quadruple your business. But at first, you have to really want it on your own. And that's something that I learned the hard way. A lot of people learning it even harder. It happened recently with something that we were working on. Like I said, I set myself up for that expectation of whether I'm going to go at this alone or with these people. Maybe I'll learn some things. Maybe we'll have some good ideas that I can take away from this and utilize. So I always want to take away and say that I have a positive outlook on everything, the silver lining and everything. So you should do the same. Think about it. Think about your relationships in your life. Think about the people in your life. You know, think about these things. Really, really think about it. Think about your significant other and how you guys got together and how your relationships worked out. Look at your past relationships, see how they have not worked out. See what went wrong. Maybe reanalyze it and say, you know what? That didn't work out. Maybe more or less because of me. And you might have put too much blame on the other person and didn't really take much for yourself. But the variable is we do have an effect on relationships, the way we handle things too. So that's where I'm going to leave it. Just think about that. Really think about that. Let that stew into your mind. I really appreciate you for listening to me, taking the time out of your day, and maybe you're commuting somewhere and listening to what I'm talking about. And I really love you all for that. Thank you so much. And I will talk to you again on another episode. Good night, everyone.